By the end of March, we were no longer taping our newscast in our OETA studios in Oklahoma City. Like most of you, we are working from home and learning how to use Zoom to help gather our news content. I'll pick up our year in review with a recap of April, May, and June. April began with safer at home protocols in place statewide, and leaders sounding the alarm that PPE or personal protective equipment was in short supply.
All hospitals are trying to be very, very careful with their mask supply so that we don't run out when the peak hits.
And the issue is even more acute for small rural hospitals.
We only have probably about 9 days of PPE, which is kind of the average in the state. We have put orders out there from many different suppliers, but it's just almost impossible.
The shortage put a spotlight on the nation's supply chain and an unhealthy reliance on Chinese manufacturing for critical items.
We found that we were very dependent on China for a lot of our products. We've got to be able to look at our supply chains for medicines, for protective equipment, for critical minerals, all those things.
On April 6th, an historic special session declared a healthcare emergency, granting Governor Stitt additional emergency powers.
Do we have assurances from the governor that he will be notifying and making that public, which rules, regulations, statutes that he may be suspending?
We have made the commitment that information will then be made public on our end.
COVID-19 quickly took its toll with an outbreak discovered at the Grace Skilled Therapy Center in Norman.
7 deaths and 54 cases of coronavirus, and that's for residents and staff.
And a different kind of toll befell Oklahomans who are locked down at home with abusive relatives.
We have isolation that is ordained, which means we have hostage situations with the abuser in complete control over everything.
Crisis calls and protective order requests in Oklahoma rose significantly.
I'm starting to hate this virus. I hope you do as well. It knows no boundaries. Not geographic locations, not race, not gender.
The abuse of a child is often discovered by school administrators. Both schools shut down. That was no longer happening. On a positive note, federal help ensured that school lunch programs would continue.
That's really, I think, a testament to just how important these meals are for families who have lost jobs, who are in a very serious period of uncertainty economically.
Another COVID casualty. Non-emergency dental work and elective surgeries were banned until Friday, April 24th. By the end of the month, frustration over the safer-at-home orders was beginning to grow.
I don't blame anybody for being frustrated that businesses are closed. I'm frustrated that businesses are closed.
The month ended with a phased reopening that included restaurants, salons, gyms, churches, and state parks.
Would my gut have picked May 1st? No, but here we are. And let's make the best of it.
An attitude shared by clergy and restaurant owners across the state.
I think that there are a lot of people in churches and pastors who can't wait to say, hey, we can go back and meet together physically.
There's not any industry that's more eager to get back up and running than the restaurant industry is.
And there was no industry operating under greater stress or with more courage and determination than Oklahoma's healthcare industry. In early May, 18 aircraft from Altus and Vance Air Force bases flew over medical centers in the Oklahoma City and Tulsa area to salute them and say thanks.
We have the lowest infection rate in our region and the lowest across the entire Sun Belt.
The governor was less enthusiastic about ongoing budget negotiations. He vetoed 4 funding bills, and all 4 were overridden by the legislature, which passed a $7.7 billion budget on Monday, May 4th.
We did an excellent job of protecting core services, including education.
This has been a very disappointing, contentious session.
Phase 2 reopening began on May 15th. And included the return of organized sports, amateur and professional.
Let's go! Let's go! Let's go, Sadie!
Gosh, they are just so excited. They were, I'm so glad to be back, and we missed you, and they're ready to play.
It was good just to get back out on the field and put gloves on and put boots on and kick a ball. I think that was my favorite part of it.
May is graduation month for thousands of Oklahoma students. But this year was different, with almost all ceremonies conducted online.
Welcome to this university's first ever virtual bell ringing ceremony.
It was the same 60 miles away in Stillwater.
The thing that disappointed me most about not being able to walk across the stage was for my parents, because I know they're really looking forward to that.
NASA Administrator Jim Bridenstine was really looking forward to America's return to space. After a 3-day weather delay, the former Oklahoma congressman got his wish on Saturday, May 30th.
We are going to launch American astronauts on American rockets from American soil. We're going to do that.
The month ended with a final Phase 3 reopening that included the resumption of limited visitation at hospitals and, after a self-imposed 2-month shutdown, the limited return of gambling, with many casinos operating at 25% capacity.
We've been prepared since we shut down, actually. Ever since we shut down, we've been cleaning, disinfecting.
On May 25th, George Floyd was killed by Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin. The incident, captured on video, inflamed the nation and ignited protests coast to coast. On Saturday, May 30th, a demonstration that began peacefully turned violent in Oklahoma City, resulting in the arrest of 13 people.
Explain to me what was unlawful, what was so scary about angry black and white and brown people getting together and saying, "Stop killing us."
The following day in Tulsa, mostly peaceful protests during the day were also marred by violence at night.
So what you're seeing right now in the country is a legitimate anger. And we can't pretend that that anger doesn't exist. And sometimes that's going to come out in really violent and unfortunate ways.
Governor Stitt responded by holding a conversation on race on his Facebook page that included local pastors and Moore Police Chief Todd Gibson.
We train a lot on firearms and driving and high liability areas, but we really need to train on engaging the mind and de-escalation and cultural diversity.
State Superintendent Joy Hoffmeister agreed that more training was also needed in education, saying in a statement, "Systematic racism has no place in any institution, much less within what has been called the great equalizer, public education."
Sometimes we have to teach our students and our children that we just want you to make it home. And this is something that my students of color have to deal with that my Caucasian students do not.
With that backdrop, Tulsa braced for a weekend unlike any in its recent history. Juneteenth celebrations would take place in the Greenwood District beginning on June 19th.
I think the country is very divided. We've seen more unity and more blacks and whites together marching in the last 3 weeks than we've ever seen at a Trump rally.
The president's rally was originally scheduled for Friday night, but was moved to Sunday to avoid a conflict with Juneteenth celebrations.
We don't have anybody black in your cabinet that can tell you that's not a good idea. This is what happened.
While large outdoor gatherings were being discouraged due to COVID-19, there was an even greater concern in holding large indoor gatherings.
I recommended that it be postponed until it's safer, until the data tells us that it's not as large a concern to have people indoors in enclosed spaces.
It's better every time.
Nothing like a Trump rally.
The rally did proceed on schedule. Confrontations outside the arena were vocal but not violent, while inside, a much smaller than anticipated crowd gathered to hear the president speak.
You are warriors. I've been watching the fake news for weeks now, and everything is negative. Don't go, don't come, don't do anything today.